and welcome back to Watches Tonight. I am your host, Tim Masso.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian, and thank you all for logging on.
Happy Thursday, and welcome back to another episode of The Trading Desk. I'm Joshua Thanos. It's my life partner, Jason. And here's our third wife.
I made it.
That's right, Jon Callahan.
So, let's start with success, the 1988 Rolex Daytona. Consider what the Daytona was before 1988. 39 millimeters, kind of ugly, plastic crystal, manual wind, rarely COSC certified, kind of delicate, minimally water resistant, and overstocked in dealer cases, often sitting around for entire calendar years after the manufacturer model year. Now, today we only covet those old models, as tough as it is to recall. We only covet those old models because of the energy that the 1988 Rolex Daytona brought to the hitherto moribund model line. Let's remember, it was a transformational watch in so many ways. Automatic winding, blanket COSC chronometer certifications, a solid and contemporary 40mm case, screw-down crowns, highly water-resistant on every variant, metal tachymeter, a sapphire crystal on every model, and an instant wait list. In fact, stories of 1990s steel Rolex Daytona wait lists from the Zenith era, they are the stuff of legend, and these watches are actually at the forefront of emerging Rolex vintage. So that's right. This basic Daytona design has been around for so long that the early models are already considered desirable vintage. Almost nothing about the external Daytona, if you really think about it, has changed since 1988. Oh sure, it's received a better bracelet, more solid clasp, new in-house caliber that you can't see and functionally have difficulty discerning, and the detail revisions to the dial are the kind of thing you observe at 6 inches range with a loop. But Rolex knows not to mess with success. Fundamentally, the 88 Daytona and the 2019 Daytona have almost everything in common. 31 years before 1988, consider what a sea change this was, what a watershed. 31 years before 88, there was no Rolex Daytona. 31 years after 1988, the watch looks almost identical. Let's face it, it's almost the same thing. Add a new movement, a better bracelet, and a ceramic bezel, and you're there. Rolex aced it in 88. Now, failure. 30 years after that seminal Daytona, the 2018 Breguet Marine. And this is where we're going to strike a little bit of a nerve because I know a lot of folks are very partial to the original Breguet Marine models. Background. Following its acquisition by the Swatch Group in 1999, Breguet had two signature model lines. One was the Type 20 pilot's watch family, and the other was the Marine water-resistant swimmable sports watch. The arrival of the Marine 5817 in 2004 helped to strengthen Breguet overall and gave it a legitimate luxury sports watch alternative to models from Vacheron, AP, and Patek Philippe at the time. Given the importance of Breguet to Swatch and the Marine to Breguet, the 2018 redesign of the line should have been a high watermark for the Hayek family's flagship brand. Not the case, or the lugs, or the dial. The tangible shock throughout the watch community, the extent that the watch community can be shocked, when the first press images arrived on the eve of Baselworld, how to describe it? Sterile, cold, anodyne, anonymous, unrecognizable as Marine. That was really the universal cry on the forums, because the timepiece doesn't look like a Marine, it doesn't look like a Breguet. All manner of comments from all sources left no doubt this was a miss. The watches, in their defense, are well made, properly finished, and expensively engineered, but just like we discussed in the open, if it doesn't look right on the wrist, then it isn't right. There's no after-the-fact justification to make you change your mind.
Why don't we do one Journe and then we'll go into the IWC, because I think the IWC is definitely a doozy.
We just did a resonance, so let's go with the Torb.
Okay, so this is a watch that we actually do not see very often at all. Surprisingly, for as many FP Journe watches as we've had over the years, I would say that this particular reference in general, we've probably had the least. Okay. So this is one of the original Tourbillon watches. This particular one looks like it's from 2002. At least the case denotes that. You've got a rose gold case. This is the Remontoir d'Égalité Tourbillon with a silver dial. So of the different versions that they made of this particular watch. It's considered Generation 4. And it's definitely a beauty. And it's probably one of, the model in general is one of my favorite models that the brand has ever produced, and I'm a really big fan of this particular combination.
Okay, not including the rutheniums, which were their own separate series. These watches were made from 1999 to mid-2003. It's considered to be the first generation, but there are 4 separate series, not including the ruthenium watch. 38 millimeters in rose gold. Let me show you a few features of what make this a Series 4. The most obvious, you can always tell a 3 or a 4 by the flat Remontoir half bridge. If it's rounded and vaulted and black polished, it's a 1 or a 2. If it has a 1 through 20 numbering up at the top, that's the very first. That's the subscription piece, or souscription, and that is literally a series of the first 20 watches that FP Journe made for subscribing customers back in 1999. Now, if you see there is a vaulted and rounded half bridge, but no subscription number, that's a Series 2. If you see a watch like this one with the flat Remontoir half bridge, but you see that the screws fixing the dial are large, and by large I mean significantly larger than these, then you're looking at a Series 3. And if you see small screws with a large printing on the power reserve scale, whereby the printing of the numerals of the reserves almost exactly the same as the minutes on the dial, then that is a Series 4. So that's how you tell them apart. Somewhere between probably about 275 and 400 of all 4 of the first series were made. Most of them were the 3rd series. So the 3rd series is pretty numerous. The 4th series, pretty numerous. Nevertheless, all of the watches objectively rare and investment grade. They're beautifully imperfect, and by that I mean you can see when you get really close there are some mistakes made on the finishing. Not everything is rounded off perfectly or creased perfectly. You will note that the dials are prone to a little bit of uneven patina and degradation. And on the movement side of the watch, which on the Tourbillon Remontoir was never quite as exciting as the dial side, you can see this is a brass movement that's been rhodium plated. You can see the linear spring that's the constant force device, and the real reason why this watch keeps such good time. And then finally, when you turn it all over, you could see that it is a filigree style tourbillon cage with a wire style outline and frame, and then a completely rounded and specular or black polished half bridge. It's a handsome piece, but if you ever want just a quick rule of thumb to tell a first generation watch from the later Tourbillon Souverain, if there's an open aperture over the Remontoir rather than a deadbeat second, you're looking at the earlier watch.
For me, hands down, I would take that LUC.
Well, for the price point,
like the finishing on the move. Yeah,
that sympathy is amazing. See the level of finishing on that watch, I like even the crystal.
It's very cool. We were talking about before the show, for those of you that don't know, that there's a rarer sympathy, the one before this, that has the crystal that goes all the way up to the case flanks.
We have one. We have one with the.
So the crystal actually has this horned shape all the way around the watch.
They realized it was too hard to make.
Yeah, I think it was just cost effective for them to switch to around crystal. But if you buy one of those with the crystal that goes all the way out to the case and you happen to need it replaced, that's going to be a tough call. Yeah.
Good luck. But so on that piece, like the early Roger Dubuis, and I say early Roger Dubuis, it's like late 90s, early 2000s, when him and Carlos Diaz were making these watches. They're my favorite watches of all time. They really are. I mean, they're unbelievable. They're unbelievable.
Well, the value for dollars right now, what you get in the presentation. So, like, we just brought in that little time only, which I don't even know if it'll ever make to the website because you might end up owning it. But the presentation box sets for these, where they literally would take a Polaroid picture of the watch, glue it to the papers, and sign them. Like you don't see that level of presentation. Even Patek doesn't have. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing stuff like that. So they're adding like the care and thoughtfulness that goes into the watch also goes into the box set. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a super nice setup. The whole thing, and again, they're competing against basically Patek and Vacheron at the time. And so as an independent, if you went and showed this large case size and it's limited to 28 pieces for the world, like it's hard to beat. Like, I mean, they basically had a Calatrava buckle before the Calatrava buckle.
That's right. That's one thing that Jason was making a note of, that, saying, "Oh, look, they ripped this off from Patek," but actually, no, they did this before.
They had the Roger Dubuis buckle. It's great. It's great. And then we have I brought some pieces that I think are also just tremendous values for independent brands. I know we talk behind the scenes about Arnold and Son, how we think it's a brand that really has a lot of value considering what the retail prices are. Right. And we've got some really cool Arnold and Sons.
Well, you get like a watch in the spirit of like MB&F, and Grubel for like a fraction of the price, and like. So it's not an easy watch to make, right?
And
it's not a discount watch.
If you love a deadbeats, like
exactly.
there's nobody that does more deadbeats than Arnold.
Arnold also does the resonance too, which they're being sued by Journe, from what I understand.
So buy one of those while you can.
Yeah, and like this one, if I don't know if the camera picks up the color perfectly or well enough to sort of highlight it, but like the blue on this dial,
I was showing that earlier.
Amazing.
You can see it. What I don't know if you could see is there's that sapphire chapter ring that's like free floating. I don't know if you can catch that in there.
Oh wow! Yeah.
You really can't. So you can see it just like as a chapter ring, but you see right there. That's a perfect shot. It's a one piece of sapphire that's elevated across the entire dial. So it's just a bridge of sapphire, which is kind of cool. And that's something like you would expect to see from like Grubel.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of a little bit is like a Breguet tradition piece, but like in the sort of modern way you'd want a watch to look. Like that's sort of Breguet's problem, is that all the watches still look like from the 1800s, and they have a tough time connecting with modern watch buyers. And this is a piece I think that like you could, if you were interested in Breguet but you just couldn't get over the styling, this is something you can jump into because you get a lot of the cool features that.
That's what you can find for less than $20,000 pre-owned.
Like, right, less than $20,000 pre-owned.
You can
it's a
buy
$51,000 retail.
Right,